Lately, I keep seeing the same message circulating through the wellness world. Notice the silence. The posts say people are stepping back from the noise, observing instead of reacting, choosing peace over conflict. The quiet, we're told, is evidence of collective awakening, a shift in consciousness, humanity evolving. It's a beautiful interpretation, but beauty and truth are not always the same thing. Because when I sit with the silence, I don't feel awakening, I feel fatigue. Not the peaceful kind that comes after meaningful effort, the kind that forms when effort stops feeling like it matters. People have been speaking for years, posting, arguing, trying to explain nuance in spaces designed to crush nuance, trying to have conversations in systems built for performance. And after enough cycles of that, something changes inside the human nervous system. Not enlightenment, exhaustion. Eventually people stop stepping into the arena, not because they've transcended the noise, because they've learned what happens there. Certainty wins. Outrage spreads faster than thought. Curiosity gets mistaken for weakness. And the moment someone admits they don't have all the answers, 10 louder voices rush in to supply them. So people step back, not spiritually, practically. Social psychology has language for this. When people believe their voice carries little impact, participation drops, not care, participation. From the outside, it looks like silence, but silence can hide a room full of people who still care deeply. They've simply lost faith in the conversation itself. There is a pattern the wellness industry rarely questions. Everything becomes awakening. Every disruption becomes a shift. Every fracture becomes part of humanity's evolution. Conflict, growth, confusion, expansion, silence, awakening. It's a narrative that sounds hopeful. It's also incredibly convenient, because if every social rupture is evidence of spiritual progress, no one has to sit with the possibility that something deeper might be breaking. The wellness industry was built on the promise that awareness leads to peace. Breathe, observe, raise your vibration, align with the universe, and if enough people do this, the world will naturally move toward harmony. It's an appealing story, but reality has never been that tidy. Human beings are not just consciousness. We are biology, psychology, history, power structures, economic pressure, cultural systems that shape behavior in ways meditation alone cannot dissolve. Yet many wellness narratives quietly ignore these layers. Instead, they reduce complex social dynamics into personal vibration. If something feels chaotic, the explanation becomes energetic. If the collective mood shifts, it becomes a frequency upgrade. And if people withdraw from the conversation, the industry calls it awakening. But what if the silence has nothing to do with enlightenment? What if it's exhaustion? What if people are stepping back not because they've transcended the noise, but because the systems we participate in reward noise and punish honesty? What if people have spent years trying to talk to one another across political, cultural, and ideological divides, only to discover that most modern platforms aren't designed for understanding at all? They're designed for engagement. And engagement thrives on conflict. Outrage spreads, nuance stalls, certainty goes viral, uncertainty disappears. So thoughtful people often withdraw first, not because they are spiritually superior, because they recognize the game and they no longer want to play. There is a quiet shift that happens when people stop believing their voice has weight. Not immediately. At first they push harder, they speak up, they argue. They explain themselves again and again, hoping that if they just find the right words, someone on the other side will finally understand. But eventually, the pattern becomes clear. The conversation isn't actually a conversation. It's a collision of certainties. Each side speaking louder, each side more convinced. Listening becomes rare. Curiosity disappears. And slowly people begin to withdraw. Not all at once. A little less engagement, a little less energy, a little more silence. Psychology has studied this for decades. When individuals repeatedly experience situations where their actions don't change outcomes, the brain begins to conserve energy. The effort stops feeling rational, not because the issue stops mattering, because the response feels pointless. The technical term is learned helplessness, but in everyday life it looks simpler. People stop trying to push the boulder uphill. They step aside and let gravity do what gravity does. This doesn't mean people no longer care about the direction things are moving. Often the opposite is true. The care is still there, but it has nowhere productive to go, so it collapses inward. And from the outside, it looks like apathy, a cultural shrug, a quiet, so what? But apathy is often misunderstood. Most of the time, it isn't the absence of care. It's the result of care hitting the same wall too many times. When effort repeatedly fails to create change, the nervous system eventually protects itself. It lowers expectations. It disengages from the fight. Not because the fight is meaningless, because the system feels unwinnable. And in a world where conversations are constantly amplified, distorted, and monetized by algorithms, that feeling spreads faster than we realize. So the silence grows, not peaceful, not sacred, just tired. Maybe the silence isn't awakening, maybe it's fatigue. Maybe it's disillusionment. Maybe it's the moment people stop believing the old stories about how change is supposed to happen. That realization can feel heavy, because when the narrative of steady progress cracks, something underneath it becomes visible. Uncertainty. Not the poetic kind that wellness culture likes to romanticize, the real kind. The kind that makes people step back and ask, now what? This is usually where the wellness industry rushes in with reassurance. Trust the process. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Humanity is evolving, but presence doesn't require comforting stories. Sometimes presence means sitting with the possibility that things are messy, that systems are complicated, that awareness alone does not magically reorganize societies. Breathing deeply will not dissolve political polarization. Meditation will not redesign economic structures. Mindfulness will not rewrite algorithms designed to provoke outrage. These practices were never meant to carry that burden. They were meant to do something quieter, something far more personal. They bring us back to the moment we're actually living in. The breath entering the body, the weight of the chair beneath us, the strange, complicated experience of being alive in a world that often refuses to make clean sense. Presence doesn't solve the world. It allows us to see it more clearly. And clarity can be uncomfortable, because clarity removes the filters. It shows the fatigue, the confusion, the loss of faith in conversations that once felt meaningful. But clarity also removes illusions, including the illusion that silence always means awakening. I don't know the answers. Mostly I'm just asking questions that feel harder to ignore lately. But one thing feels increasingly clear. For many of us, this silence does not feel like enlightenment. It feels like something else entirely. And pretending otherwise may be the very thing preventing us from understanding what's actually happening. Like what you heard, then subscribe to this channel. You can also find me at justbreathe.ghost.io. Mindfulness reminds us to question everything, because you never know what script you might be running. Always remember to just breathe.